My name is Diana Rojas, and for the last 15-20 years, I've been lovingly known as Snooky. I live in Manhattan. My nickname, well, I was playing at Chelsea Billiards one time, and some of the guys were hanging around. They decided they wanted to give me a nickname. They just, out of the blue, they're like, hey, you want, like, one of the guys, so we want to give you a nickname. Okay, so I continued playing the guy who was playing for money. And, they began throwing out little nicknames here and there, and kind of nothing stuck at the moment. So just then, I played a really tight safe on the guy. And a safe is also known as a snooker. Well, there was a guy there sitting there, George Perica. We call him George Perica. And he had a couple of drinks that night. He was a little, inebriated. And just as I played a really tight safe on the guy, he goes, "Nice Snooky, baby." And that was it. That's a difficult question to answer sometimes. I started hitting balls around when I was around 9 years old. I'd gone to a place with my mother, actually, where she wanted to speak to someone who was friends with my father and settle some affairs. My father passed away when I was really young, and he was really young, and there were a lot of things that were left unsettled, and so she needed to speak to someone about that. They decided to meet at a restaurant, and in the back they had a couple bar tables. And while I waited for her, I went to the back and I was watching the guys, and they're playing this game. And see, these are all friends of my father, so it was a trusting environment. And I sat there on the side and started watching. And one of the guys came over to me and said, "Look, this is what's going on. They need to do this and this." And so he pretty much was explaining to me 8-ball at the time, that they had a stripes and a solids and things like that. After that, I used to go to the community center, and I would play basketball there and do a lot of recreational things. And upstairs they had a large table where I started to go and watch some of the older kids that were playing, and just kind of just keep an eye out to see what it is that they were doing. And little by little, I was learning. Here I was learning, and I picked up a cue and I started emulating what they're doing. And before I knew it, I was making a couple of balls, and it became more fun. And week after week, I would come back up and play. But they were, let's say, kids that were up to 16 years old that were allowed to play, and then the 16 and overs after a certain time. Before I knew it, I was beating the young kids, and the counselor or whoever that was watching over the kids allowed me to join the older kids, the 16 and overs, and I wasn't supposed to be there, but because I already beat those kids, I guess they found it fun or funny that I did that, so they wanted me to beat the older kids. Well, I did continue to play when I was a kid, and I played in my into my late teens and early 20s, and I competed not so much on a tournament circle. I did, as far as like the local tournaments, yes. I've always tried to be proactive when it came to that, and try to keep pool alive in New York, or make my attempt to keep it alive in New York. And I did play a lot for money, and I was basically known for playing for money, is what I was doing at the time. I quit for 10 years. I quit. There's no exact reason why I quit. There was just, I guess, I wanted to try other things in life. I always loved pool, and I had my whole teenage years and my early 20s doing the same thing. But you know, there was the responsible side of me too that wanted to go into the workforce, and you know, just live life that way also. And just after 10 years, there was just something. I was literally sitting in the office, and like there was this nagging about going back to shoot pool, and it wasn't on a recreational basis or a social night with friends. It was like a constant nagging to go back to play pool, do it again. You know what I mean? Just and I remember, calling a friend of mine, Gypsy, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, is Finnegan still running those tournaments on the weekdays?" And he's like, "Yeah, you want to go?" And I said, "Actually, I do. I feel like going back and just, seeing some of my old friends and people I hadn't seen, or people who knew that I left New York for a short while and came back, and it was fun to see everybody, and it felt very comfortable. Like it's like where you been, you know what I mean? So I literally went into my storage closets and took out some of my storage. I was fishing a lot, and I love to fish, but I took out my fishing equipment in the back of the closets were all my cues, and I pulled out my cases and decided this is what I'm gonna do again. I did. Actually, I've done quite a bit of things. I've done everything from blue collar to white collar. For the most part, I was in offices doing anything from admin work to, you know, secretarial and uh, just things like that and that of that nature. I mean, without getting too specific, um, but all types of different companies. I met Ginky. I was really, really young, and he was young as well. Actually, my brother was friends with one of his cousins, and they played handball together and things like that. Ginky used to play handball too, but decided, I guess, pool was right for him. And my brother played handball. My Ginky went to play pool, and when I met Ginky, I was about 14, and he was about 18 or 19, and couldn't make more than three balls. Ginky was terribly focused and determined um, to do something with this game. It was clear from when we were really young. He, was always in that pool room in Chelsea. He was always there. He was always watching the guys. He was doing a lot of the same things that I was doing at the time, except that I was really young and had to had to leave the pool room. And he was taken under people's wings and was allowed to, learn and study and do everything that he was accomplished now. He always told me, I'm not a good player. I was just terribly determined and focused, and I wanted to, learn. And that's not, you look at a lot of players and they say, oh, there's a lot of natural talent and things like that. Talent he had, but he got it because he earned it the hard way. He put, his efforts and hours and determination into being who he became. And, you know, it's some people are lighthearted about the whole situation, say, yeah, it just came natural to him. It really didn't. Not just yet. Once he got in gear and started, things started happening, and that's when he molded his game to be his game and who he was. One thing for sure, especially in the 90s, that there were players coming from all over. Um, Chelsea was a very notorious pool room for action, but there were a lot of places out, in Queens that were making a statement as far as what the action or representative action in New York. Um, I think there's a lot of pool rooms that had their house pros and things like that. In this area, people would come specifically to play, Gypsy and Ginky and Johnny B. There would be action for all these guys all the time, and New York was well represented with players. The most I played per game was 1,000 a game. per set was in the several thousands. I won't say exactly, but several thousands. As a pool player, anywhere, it can be really tough. This is not something that's very easy. You can find action. There are a lot of people willing to play for a large amounts of money, and doesn't necessarily mean that you're so good that that's why you played for that much. It just means that you found someone who is equal or close to your caliber who's willing to bet that amount of money. Um, some people will allot a certain amount of their, you know, capital to dedicate that to gambling, and I can afford to lose this much, or perhaps there are people who do it in a different way where this is all I got and I got to make something out of it. I personally have been involved in both aspects of that. There are times where, I have certain amount of money and I say, okay, I can gamble this. It's no different than going to the casino and say that you're gonna, you're only gonna lose this much. Not that you're going with that negative attitude. It's just that you're going to responsibly respect your own money and say, this is how much I can afford to lose. And then I've been on the flip side of it. When I was younger, this is why I was known as just playing for money instead of doing tournaments because, well, unfortunately, like I said, my father passed away when I was really young. My mother was out on the workforce. She became disabled from work, and I always wanted to live independently and try to do what I can for myself. And I didn't want to turn to my mother and say, look, I want my $150 sneakers and things, and things that teenagers think about at the time, and say, hey, look, mom, she can't afford it and I'm not going to make her feel bad because of it. So I went out on the workforce. My first job was when I was 11, and I was doing things at the market for off the books pay and things like that. So when I somewhat honed someone of a craft in pool, I decided I'm going to gamble, and I made money at it. And yes, there are times that you lose, but sometimes you just put all your eggs in one basket and say, hey, ship it. I'm going to play for money. I'm going to double this, or you're going to make or break it. You know what I mean? For the most part, for most of my life, I've owned the cue. It began as someone actually had given my brother a cue because he also plays. He's not into it as much as I am, but he does play, and they'd given him a cue, which we both would use. He's going out, he's going to use it, or I go out, I'm going to use it. And so from the start, I pretty much, felt like having your own cue at something, for this game was important. So I always had my own cue. Well, unfortunately, for like the old time nitty gritty pool rooms where the action and the smoke filled rooms and things like that, there are some people who like that. Um, there's there's nothing wrong with liking that, and I personally I like it, but there's always a beauty in going to a nice pool room and say, hey, that place is really nice. It's uh if there's action there, it seems to be that the most important thing is the action. Everyone wants to feel like they're going somewhere where there's, not only competition for them, but they might be able to even observe higher caliber players and, perhaps pick up something, from watching them. However, some of the pool rooms that have closed, the economy these days, I mean, you can get all into that, but um, the media has picked up on, pool, and they've done positive things with it and shown it in a different light. A lot of people only think that pool is just this boring game where there's a bunch of lumps sitting around doing nothing but just passing the day. And there's other people who have gotten a different aspect of what pool is now. Their tournaments, their leagues, they have people from all calibers getting involved in what this is now. And now you have shows and movies and magazines, and the media has picked up on that and shown a different light to it, to an otherwise less popular sport. Well, not necessarily. It wasn't something that I saw very often, and it definitely wasn't shown on TV the way it is today. If they did show any pool, it was always the men, which was great to watch either way. I never bothered to wonder whether or not there were a lot of other women playing. Just because of my upbringing, I was always hanging around the fellas. I didn't grow up with sisters. I have two brothers, and once again, my mother was out on the workforce. My dad had passed away, so for the most part, it's like, hey, hang out with your brothers. You got to do what they do, and they played sports, and this is what I did. So any sports that I did was always with the guys. There were very few females, even just growing up in the neighborhood, that did a lot of things that the boys did all the time. And so I guess I was just used to it. And I do know that there were women out there playing the sport and doing well, but I never said, I want to be just like them or anything like that. I kind of just want to just be me. Well, I've I've been with some really understanding people in my life, and it's understanding in the beginning, just like any relationship, whether it's pool or the job or whatever it might be. There's interference sometime, with that other person, where you can't devote as much time to them, or I mean, I try to pride myself in being, caring and nurturing, but there are times where I would hope that they would understand, look, I have to, do a tournament this weekend, or, I need to be at the pool room, there's action, or, anything from your phone ringing in the middle of the night because, people are looking for you to, for a game or something. And so it is a lot for someone who is not in this community to understand, or to even accept. And they can accept it for a while. Like I said in the beginning, everything is just peaches and cream, but that's what I call the honeymoon period. So everything is fine and dandy. Oh yes, honey, I understand. And but sometimes it turns out that it just can't be understood anymore. Yes, I do. Part of the changes that are going on in pool is that the action, it's still around. The tournaments help, and I think together make up what we have now. I think if it was we relied solely on action, it's so scattered. It's here, it's there. I mean, it goes everywhere. And then tournaments, this is the same reason why pool room owners will host the tournament. Say, hey, I want you to come out this day, and this is when we're going to do this. And I mean, it's their personal gain. They want people to come, and it also helps with us. It just gives us a place to go and say, hey, this is where people are being seen. There's action there, whatever. So it brings it along. Um, I am older than a lot of people think, and I never feel like you're too old to really do what you love. I mean, um, there are people younger, who are out to, you know, for blood. Is what I call. They're out for blood, and you know, any signs of it, and it's like wham, you know. But doesn't mean that I'm not right behind you. I'm just like I said, if I feel like if you can't do what you love, doesn't matter how old you are, you find some way to do it. I mean, whether you're pro or whether you just want to go and compete, whether you want to, you know, boom, make a statement somewhere, you're never too old to do that. So that's why, you know, I play my tournaments, I do what I do, but it's very difficult. It's too difficult now to pursue a pro career, unfortunately, because of just the way things are going with that. It's a combination of both. Um, you know, they have these tournaments, and you know they're clear across the United States. Sometimes, you know, uh, the payouts, unfortunately, are not, you know, worth it, and I'd like to see it change. Um, but considering, if you say a tournament is in Oregon somewhere for the women, you know, you have hotel stays to pay. You might have to rent a car. You have, you know, tournament fees to pay. And by the time you rack up what it is that costs to go to that tournament, if you win, you just might break even. So why do it? Not that I wouldn't want to do it. It's just, you know, I hear that they're trying to sanction uh, the tour and see if or petition or whatever it is that they're doing to maybe try to get some in our area. And if they do, then I would be willing to participate. Well, I've been around a long time. It wasn't easy in the beginning, much like any other sport that I ever played growing up. You know, at first it's, you know, they look over and it's like, a girl, you know, they have that kind of attitude. But um, I think with mutual respect, and when they actually see that you're determined and that you're actually doing something with the sport, or, you know, I mean, it's not saying make a name for yourself, but really just, hey, I'm here and I'm doing what you're doing, and you get, you know, mutual respect. That's the key to it, and mutual respect. But yeah, in the beginning it's tough because they just see it like, who's that girl, you know? And now it's like, oh, that's Snooky. No, I think it's really funny. I've been asked that for a long time. I have a lot of friends that at the time could have taught me. A lot of people, you know, say, hey, you know, Ginky, you know, 21 years. Did you ever ask him anything about the, you know, to teach you anything? I really didn't. And him and a lot of other, you know, great players that are here in New York, or even some that I've met outside of New York, I've never asked them anything about teaching me. And it's it's not that it's a bad thing. Yeah, I don't want to or anything. It's just there are some people who are willing to, and some, you know, that are not. And well, like growing up in a pool room, you know, let me give you an example. If you're looking at a little girl in a pool room, she's sitting there, she's like 10, 11 years old. Uh, a man in 40s, 50 years old that's playing, he's not likely to call a little girl over and say, hey, you know, kid, let me show you this, or, you know, it doesn't look right. It never did. But turn this way and you see a little boy, he's 10, 11 years old, they say, hey, son, come here, you know, let me show you this. And they're more inclined to do so. So it was just a matter of, you know, the sexes. You know, a female, same age, male, same age. They're they're more likely to go show the boy something than to say, hey, little girl, come here. So I guess that's another thing. I just grew up in that with that mindset, and so a lot of the things, or pretty much everything that I had learned into my adult life, was because trial and error. I decided to go to the pool room, get on the table, and do it. Now that I'm older, hey, pointers come all the time. I'm not just that little girl over there. I'm viewed as a player. I'm respected because I respect, and people might ask me something, and I might ask somebody something nowadays. 100,000. Yeah. Um, this was out in one of the Queen's pool rooms at the time. I don't want to mention who, but I was called. I was in a neighboring pool room somewhere, and they, that person who was gonna play called me and said, "Look, I'm gonna get in this game, and I'm gonna play so and so, and I want you to come out." And I was called a lot for those reasons. They knew I like to gamble. I like to side bet. So, I was called to the pool room, and a couple of friends even called me and say, hey, guess what? So-and-so is going to play and things like that. So I said, all right, I'll be right there. And, I went, and I guess one of the reasons they had me come was they wanted me to hold the money. Yeah, I trusted me with the money. I should have left. Yes. Um, there are people you can trust, and there are people you cannot trust. That anywhere in life. It's not just pool room thing. Um, if you say you're gonna play for a certain amount of money, and you agree, it's usually what I call money on the wood makes the game go good. Being that I was gone for 10 years, I I come back feeling like that young kid again, and I say, hey, I want to go at this again. You know what I mean? There are times where you just sit there and it say, hey, you put on the gloves and put them up. It's time to fight. You want to get back into it. You got to do it full force. I mean, sometimes, yeah, you have your moments where there's so many other things going on in your life, and you're thinking about family, you're thinking about jobs, you're thinking about just anything, whatever it is, it interferes. A pool is someplace where you need to be there as much as much as you can. You have to give that game respect in order for things to work out the way you want them to. Yeah, there are times where kick will kick your ass, but there are times where you go and kick ass back, and there are times where you're feeling a little aloof. You're feeling like you don't want to participate, and that's fine. There's people who try to work through that, and that's a determined person. That doesn't mean that someone who decides not to is not determined. It's just that they accept that they need a break, and life was like that for me before, and I took a break. I mean, that's not why I took 10 years off, but I understood at that point is, hey, I need to do this with my life for now, and see where it goes. And in short, for now, it took me back to pool. So you work through those moments in life. You work through. It's no different than working through every rack. You get a rack. It's an open table. It's a closed table. I mean, you got clusters here. Things you find, it's a puzzle. Whatever it is, it's a puzzle. What your life is a puzzle. Your game is a puzzle. That next rack is a puzzle. It's just a way you have to find a way to figure it out. I'm using Lucchese Hybrids. They've recently sponsored me, and I am very grateful. It's They're pretty good cues. I've tried them when I was younger, And I still have my old Lucchese cue. And I have the hybrids now, which are a little different, and but in a positive way. It's working out great for me. Thank you.